Man, this is Deion Dawkins, man, and you're listening to The Scoop on OwlScoop.com. You already know.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to The Scoop, OwlScoop.com's podcast. It's season 9, episode 42. I'm OwlScoop.com editor John DiCarlo. Flying solo today. No Declan Landis, no Rymir Vaughn. Kyle Gauss is at the Phillies game with his children, and he's watching Johnny Zwizlak at work. So it's just me today, but we'll still have a fun podcast, a fun show for you guys. You'll hear my interview later on with Andy Carl, the executive director of the TUFF Fund, along with some recruiting updates, both on the football end and the basketball end. A reminder, as always, that The Scoop is brought to you by Greenspan and Greenspan Injury Lawyers. If you've been injured while on the road or the highway and the crash was someone else's fault, the insurance company is not going to be on your side. You need us, Temple Law grads, who will fight hard to get the compensation that you deserve. We only get paid if we win, so in Pennsylvania or New York, call us today at 215-261-7359. That's 215-261-7359. And you can find them on the web at greenspans-law.com. That's greenspans-law.com. Famous number 42s. There's only one appropriate one to mention on this day, and that would be the late Jackie Robinson, who of course paved the way for so many players, so many African-American baseball players. So we'll pay tribute to Jackie Robinson today with famous number 42s. No honor around this day today. We'll leave that for next week when Declan returns. If you had a chance to catch last week's episode, that included part of my interview with Deontay Christmas, who is going to be inducted into the Temple Athletics Hall of Fame. I mentioned last week that the portion of that interview, that's only part of my conversation with Deontay. I was fortunate enough to talk to him for close to 2 hours. So what you heard there with Deontay in last week's episode was about 40 minutes or so. You can stay tuned for more of my conversation with Deontay Christmas. If you're an OwlScoop.com subscriber, we're going to be running a Christmas in July thing, probably a couple more portions or installments of that interview to look forward to. Talk to him about Devin Booker, a local player from the 2025 class that Temple's recruiting at Cristo Rey, where Deontay is now an assistant coach. A lot more Temple memories, his thoughts on how NIL and the portal have affected high school recruiting. Some great stuff from his own version of what went down when he trash talked LeBron James. So a lot of great stuff there. So I appreciate all the good feedback that we got from last week's episode and that interview with Deontay. But I just want to remind you all that, again, if you're an OwlScoop.com subscriber, subscribers to the site will have access to the rest of my conversation with Deontay Christmas. A Temple basketball recruiting update last week we mentioned on the show when we were recording. We had mentioned that Adam Fisher kind of put out the bat signal. He likes previewing the verbal commitments with stuff from social media. He put out something from Moe Tavern from The Simpsons, and that was to signify that Temple had added a Tulsa transfer in Mohamed Kita, a 7'1", 220-pound center. Had a chance to talk to him last week after he announced his verbal commitment. That story, again, if you're an OwlScoop.com subscriber, you can get full access to that story, a little bit about his life, his basketball career, why he chose Temple, where he thinks he can help the Owls this year. More on the recruiting front, Temple's also set to host another big man from the 2025 class. That's Phelps big man, Justin Hauser. They're hosting him on an unofficial visit June 20th, so he will be on campus now. He's also taking an unofficial visit to Penn State on June 26th. Our friend Ari Rosenfeld from Elite High School Scouting has told me that Justin can run the floor pretty well. He's a mobile lefty, decent shooter for a 7-footer. Sounds like he would fit Temple pretty well for what Adam Fisher likes to do at the 5. Rymir Vaughn from our staff is going to be talking to Justin Hauser, has an interview planned with him. So stay tuned to OwlScoop.com for more on Justin Hauser, more of his recruitment, more about his recruitment. So stay tuned to OwlScoop.com. If you're a subscriber, as always, you'll get the latest recruiting information there. Quick scheduling update to pass along. Chris DeSano, Rhode Island basketball's color analyst, put out there on Twitter that Rhodey coach Archie Miller told College Chalk Talk that the Rams are trying to get Temple on the schedule for this coming season. So another scheduling note there, another team that Temple is looking to add. Not official yet, but it's looking likely. So we'll keep you updated on that. A couple football recruiting updates to pass along. If you're an OwlScoop.com subscriber, by now you've probably read Johnny Zwizlak's story on Cameron Boykin, the quarterback from the Potomac School in Virginia, who took his official visit. Johnny talked to him about the official visit. Sounds like Temple is very much in the mix there. However, Temple's also recruiting another quarterback, this one from North Jersey, Shabazz High School, and Romeo Tables. He's a track star, also a pretty good quarterback. He's been at Clifton High School the past couple of years. He's on an official visit to Temple now. I've had a chance to chat with him a little bit. Very high on Temple, has a UConn offer. Delaware's recruited him. Dartmouth and Yale have recruited him, as well as Columbia. So he's got some Ivy League interest from Fordham. Really, really good student as well. Told me that he had a 4.0 GPA this year, a 3.8 GPA last year. So really, really good student. He's really high on Temple. Of course, is going to be talking to Stan Drayton on his official visit. And we'll see how that goes there. Temple could take two quarterbacks. We'll see how this works itself out with two guys who seem to like Temple a lot. Again, Cameron Boykin has visited. Romeo Tables is visiting now. Neither guy has committed, but it sounds like Temple's very much in the mix with both of those guys. So as always, we'll keep you posted on the latest football recruiting information as well, in addition to basketball. So we promised you all at the outset of the show an interview with Andy Carl, the executive director of the TUFF Fund, and he's with us now on the Scoop. Andy, thanks for being with us. I regret to inform you that it's just me today. I don't know if Kyle, Johnny, Declan, and Rymir are trying to send us a signal that they secretly hate our guts, but it's just us today. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Not bad.
Enjoying the heat wave?
Yeah, sure. Who isn't?
Me. I
Yeah.
sweat a lot. So
Well, I appreciate you being on. I know people love hearing from you and hearing about the TUFF Fund. It was around this time, I think, last year that we had you on. We had Jim. Heisier was on with us too. So from last year to now, I know you guys have made a lot of progress, and I know that there's more progress to be made. You work pretty tirelessly on this, but from now to then, take us through the last year. What kind of progress have you guys made? What's different from last year to now? I know that there's a lot, but if you could take listeners through, maybe people who don't know as much about the TUFF Fund or the progress that you guys have made, what's different a year later?
I think understanding of the landscape, we kind of know and everybody knows that maybe Temple was a little slow in the uptick and education of what NIL is and the importance of it. And so I think that there's been a slow but gradual process that folks from the very highest levels of the university all the way down to prospective student athletes and everybody involved in the process, I think is slowly but coming to an understanding that NIL is the number one factor in acquiring and retaining student athletes. No different than financial aid being probably the largest determining factor of general students at a university deciding whether they want to attend a university. And so I'd say there was an evolution in organization. I think there was some folks that had the means to maybe be able to give that maybe didn't quite understand NIL and its importance and the process. Got educated through a variety of ways, and myself and a few other people kept chopping wood and kept educating and kind of kept coming, right? Like, I think I've kind of made it abundantly clear over the last year through a variety of means, whether it's interviews or in-person appearances, that I'm not going anywhere. I understand the importance of this. I know how important it is to the success of our university and our athletic department and our student athletes. And so, I kind of kept coming. And so, I think we're in a better position now. I think we still have a large way to go. But we're in a significantly better spot than we were last year. Both, and not to discredit other teams, but especially in our men's basketball and football programs, we've seen a larger jump percentage-wise in investment, and hope to kind of continue that. And as that snowballs and success snowballs, then you hope that you're in a position to compete both locally in your conference and nationally.
Back in March, you guys had a lot of success with the matching campaign when Adam Fisher's team was going on that run, kind of unexpected run. They had reached a real low point in their season, and instead of folding, they go on that run and they fall one game short of going to the NCAA tournament, which I don't think anybody really would have expected. And with the addition of the team winning, you guys had a lot of buzz. A lot of people were chiming in, the Kevin Nagandis of the world, former student athletes, and you guys had a lot of success during that run. What was that like? I mean, I'm sure that had to be pretty fun and pretty rewarding. Temple became sort of like a bigger national story, and people were starting to take notice. I know for a lot of people that was a reminder of how good things can be. Obviously, they fell short of getting to the tournament, but what was that time like for you guys? And was it a reminder of people for people like potential donors or people who were chiming in and saying, I get it now, I get the excitement, momentum, building more momentum. What was that time like for you guys?
It was a fun, exciting, like you said, kind of caught us off guard. Guilty as charged. I was at my cousin's wedding in Amelia Island, Florida, and watching, the game on my, the games on my phone, against, the early rounds, and didn't, to be honest with you, anticipate a run like that. And so then I found myself nose deep into my phone at my cousin's wedding and reception against FAU. And, earlier that day, sitting at our Airbnb's pool, and my phone starts going off kind of out of nowhere. And it started with a pledge from Jake Pavorsky, who works with TBT and was a former manager, member of the program. And then I think Kevin Nagandi got involved, Zach Gelb got involved. All of a sudden, I started getting followed and retweeted by Field Yates and Woj. And so I knew what it felt like to be like the popular girl in school for a little bit. My phone was going crazy, and it just kind of snowballed. And then, obviously we beat FAU in the semifinals to get us to UAB. And so, we saw a significant rise in participation with donors, with dollars. We saw over 1 million impressions in engagement on our social media. And so, yeah, if anything, it was a testament to what success can be and do, not just for an NIL collective nonprofit, but what it does for a program, a department, and a university. And so it would be foolish to say that NIL doesn't have a direct impact in the success of a team.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've kind of been beating that drum now for years, that if you invest in NIL, you're investing in success, and investing in success brings, the momentum that we saw from that. And so, off the back of that, we saw significant dollars. We saw a commitment of a matching gift program and campaign that we're still actively fundraising for. And when I say we, I'm fundraising for, but I'm excited off of that momentum for the men's basketball program. And we saw the fruits of that labor, right? Like, I don't think I'm talking out of school here, that we probably don't see some of the transfers that we saw come in to the program over the offseason without a significant increase in NIL funding and opportunities for our student athletes to do the charitable initiatives that we're excited to really get into over the summer and the fall. And so, with our alumni and donors and fans stepping up and providing the resources to be able to activate, we probably wouldn't have seen the success that we had in the portal, and putting us in a position for the players and coaches to do what they need to do, which is go out and win and give us that warm and fuzzy feeling that we saw out of Fort Worth in March.
What goes into this? What goes into being the executive director of the TUFF Fund? You have a full-time job, you have a wife, you have 3 children. You don't get paid for this. You have a lot of other responsibilities in your life. I know there's not, it's kind of like a lot of people who have a job that they like. They'll say no two days are the same. And there may not be a typical TUFF Fund day, but if there is one, what's it like? Like what goes into it?
You're right. There isn't a typical day. It also depends on like what time of year is it. I also deal with multiple sports, and
Yeah.
I've not just had conversations with our men's basketball staff or football staff. I've talked to women's basketball and field hockey. In fact, going into it, like one of my, like the company that I run, that sometimes people forget that I run, handles housing for large sporting events. And so I was bidding on the hotel and housing contract for USA Field Hockey. And so I went to our field hockey student athletes and signed them to NIL agreements for them to create a video to vouch for my company in the bid packet that we submitted. And so that's, your typical and true and traditional NIL. And so, yeah, there is no standard day, right? Like I think about like the things that I've done over the last, I don't know, week to then 10 days. It's, like I was at an event with a bunch of men's basketball student athletes and football student athletes at Temple Hospital's
Yeah, I wanted to
cancer
ask you about, yeah.
yeah, celebration event. I
Mm.
worked and been in conversation with the Owl Club about sponsoring a hole at the Owl Club's football alumni golf outing. I've handled donor phone calls, both big and small, just picking my brain on, everybody loves like, hey, are we going to fill that last roster spot? When are we going to get a big man? And it's, I have to reassure them, like, while I am somewhat involved in that process, I'm not involved in I'm not scouting. Like I'm not looking at someone's like a power forward's like jumping ability or efficient shooting. But at the time of having that conversation, I step in and have the conversation. I had a phone call yesterday with CHOP about getting involved in some charitable initiatives with them and having our student athletes engage with them. I was at men's basketball practice for a little bit yesterday. Then I went down to football and met with Ernest Wilson and their staff on how to, what the proper process is for NIL and how that is engaged with football. I was on a Zoom with Jameel Brown and his family yesterday to talk about their upcoming camp and how we're going to set that up and registration and venue and insurance and t-shirts and all of that and engaging with our lawyers to set up contracts properly. I was on a phone call with a local investment firm that's a global firm, but their headquarters is located in Montgomery County and how we can get them involved both on the university side, but also supporting our student athletes. I also had like my daughter's third birthday party and I'm potty training her and my kids graduated from pre-K last week. And so it's a confluence of everything. And then I, run the company that I run with, 4 or 5 employees on top of all of that. And it's a crazy, it's a crazy existence, but I find it fun. Sometimes my wife has to like reel me back in and be like, hey, like listen, like the priority has to be the priority, which, I get and completely can empathize with her and her position of honing in my passions. But yeah, that is like what it looks like on maybe like a week to week basis. I deal with agents who reach out to me and say, hey, are you interested in this player? I deal with agents in terms of contract negotiations and clauses in contracts and how student athletes are being paid and interacting with their schedules to make sure that they're in the right spots for upcoming charitable initiatives. And so a lot of moving parts, dealing with a lot of different people, working with the athletic department. Obviously, they're now allowed to be more participatory in terms of NIL. And so, yeah, that's kind of what a typical, maybe like, I wouldn't say a day, but like a week looks like.
What's the why for you? You've been a longtime fan. Jenny, you mentioned your wife, Jenny gets this about you. She's patient with you and she knows how much Temple means to you. But again, for someone who maybe is listening and hearing from you for the first time, a lot of people have said this, like Temple has, how many alums at other places, multiple people have stepped forward to say, I'm going to do this, or we're going to have 4 or 5 or 6 people helping out with this collective. At the end of the day, when it's boiled down to with the TUFF Fund, you're running it. What's the why for you? Why do you do this?
I think it's a couple things. First and foremost, like who doesn't, like, so I love the university, right? It's given me most of the things I have in life, friends, mentors, education, professional experiences and opportunities. And I think on the whole, it does that for a lot of people. And so anytime you can invest in that to not only, I think it's not only an investment in yourself, but I think it's also important to invest in the people that come behind you, right? That you also want them to have that opportunity. I think also like I like to win, right? And so I'm big into athletics, big into sports. I have been my entire life, and so when I came to Temple, you obviously support. I think it's important to support your alma mater, support your university, and the teams are one of the best way to do that. There's a scoreboard at the end. That's why they have a scoreboard. So you always want to be on the good side of that scoreboard as opposed to the bad side. And so why do I do this? I think I can utilize a lot of the like educational wherewithal that I have. I've talked about time, talent, and treasure. I think I don't know how much time I have. I wish I probably had more. And I wish I could just cut a check for a couple $1 million and cure a lot of the problems. But I think my talent is kind of having an understanding of how to make this thing go and succeed. And so by doing that and setting the table for hopefully folks to take up on this initiative, it allows us to win. And winning's fun. Winning breeds a lot of other things. And so I hate to lose. I like to win. So let's give it a shot.
Temple now has the help of the Our Elite Fund. So they're a for-profit NIL collective. I had Lou Parisi on a couple weeks ago on the Scoop. He was able to talk to listeners, talk to people in our audience about what they do. He talked about the great work that you've done with the TUFF Fund. Tell me about what that relationship looks like now, like how you guys can complement each other, how you can help each other out.
Yeah, Lou's great. Jackie's great. Super passionate. I think they're in it for the right reasons. And I was approached by a marketing company, I&M, who they are now partnering with several months ago, where they have some built-in mechanisms for marketing initiatives, but it didn't really align with what our mission is, which is nonprofit charitable initiatives in and around the greater Philadelphia area. It was more companies that just wanted to get their brands out to the fans, to the alumni. And so the only way to really, I didn't, we didn't want to leave money on the table. I didn't want to leave money on the table, but at the same time, I couldn't form another collective, right? Unless, that would have gotten really expensive, not only form an LLC, but the divorce attorney that I would have had to hire because my wife would have left. And so I kind of reached out to athletics and said, hey, this is the situation. We're going to be leaving money on the table if we don't. If there's someone that you can find that has the ability and to do so, this is something that I think we should kind of travel down. And athletics, who had been working with Lou in the past in some NIL spaces, a former student athlete and a B2B guy, stepped up and took off and ran with it. And kind of going back to your questions, like how do we align? I think I'm charitably focused. I'm donor driven. There are some companies that want to get into the charitable space. And so certainly we'll take up those opportunities. But I think Lou and Jackie are more focused, and I think it's a great opportunity to capitalize on the corporate abilities financially in and around the greater Philadelphia area to monetize our student athletes' name, image, and likeness, their brands, and Temple's brand in the city of Philadelphia and in the region. That was like the first thing that everybody asked me, like, are they your adversary? And absolutely not. Like we're all rowing in the same boat towards the same goal, which is, make Temple University and the athletic department as marketable as possible for potential student athletes and current student athletes. When that happens, we all see the value in the success on the court and on the field and on the pitch, et cetera, et cetera. And so all hands on deck, like it's like, I love it. Like I don't have the time in the day to reach out to these, like I said, like I can't do like a full sales process to reach out to, I can't tell you how many times someone has said, well, have you thought of reaching out to Wawa? It's like, yes, I have, in between diaper changes and all those things. And so, but there's a sales process that goes into that. And I think Lou is significantly better equipped to be able to attack it from that side. And I also think the for-profit thing is a negative connotation because he is kind of like a marketing company, right? So he's bringing these companies together with our student athletes as a collective. And so there's a cost associated with that. There's a cost associated with starting up a venture like that. There's a cost associated with the activations that go into place. And so, yes, they're going to be taking a piece of the agreement, but it's not a malice intent. It's just a part of, it's a cost of doing business. And so ours is a little different. I don't take a paycheck from this. I don't take any funding from this. I have an intern that's doing content for us this summer, and I joke that our intern is getting paid more than I ever have for doing this. But
That's true.
It's kind of like, like I made a promise to people that, like I'm going to do this. I'm doing it for the student athletes. I'm doing it because I want us to win, both in the classroom, on the playing field. And, I'll take it as far as I can go. And hopefully we grow this thing to the point where I can't handle it anymore. And there needs to be, a more sustainable approach in place. But as of right now, I am what you got. So that's where we are.
So by now, I think everybody knows about the recent House versus NCAA legislation that's going to allow schools to directly pay student athletes. We kind of have vague answers at best so far about what Temple's going to be able to do there. We also know from that collectives aren't going anywhere and maybe become even more important now. Let's face it, like Temple does not have the athletics budget of an Alabama, a Texas A&M, and they don't even have the budget of some of their American Athletic Conference peers. Does the work of the TUFF Fund become even more important now, and more the work of the Owl Elite Fund? I mean, is that one thing that comes out of this? I mean, we know the importance of it, but does that place even more importance on it now?
I mean, it's certainly a differentiator, right? I mean, do I think it's going anywhere? No. There have been discussions about what collectives can and can't do
Right.
following the House settlement. I don't know what they are. They put in quotes true NIL, which I don't know what that means. And so, I'm going to see this. It's listen, the rules and things change almost daily, and so I keep my ear to the ground. I cross-reference and check with athletics regarding compliance when I need to, but I want to be aggressive in what is allowed. So when House came to fruition, there's more opportunities for the athletics department to get involved. I don't see Temple moving NIL internally. Like you said, I don't know how that fiscally could be possible. And so, like you said, it may become more important. It's certainly not going to change our messaging. We're going to continue to do the same things that we've done until someone says like, hey, that you're not allowed to do that anymore. And I think that we are well within our bounds of what our mission statement is to keep rolling. I feel very comfortable in what we do and how we operate. And so, yeah, we'll see what what will transpire. I mean, it's some of the information that comes out from that House settlement is pretty laughable. How Temple is paying for the misgivings of the Power 5 football programs that we weren't allowed to be a part of, but we don't really have a choice, right? So taxation without representation. So it's frustrating, but we could probably go into another hour-long pod just about that. So I'll probably leave it there before I anger any folks in Indianapolis.
Maybe you can't talk specifics as much about this, but when you've talked to certain student athletes in the past, certain prospective student athletes, and you talking about the philanthropic approach that you guys use, is that sometimes at the end of the day, you mentioned before, a differentiator, is that sometimes more appealing to them? I mean, I think we all know that at the end of the day, so many of these student athletes get, in some cases, life-changing money, and it doesn't have to be $1 million. So money that impacts their families and money that helps them, which is great. But have you been in a situation before where a student athlete or their family says, you know what? Yeah, we might have been able to get a little bit more money at XYZ place, but wow, I've seen some of the stuff that you guys have done. It's real. We can see it. It's tangibly there. You know, the recent visit to Fox Chase, whose family has not been affected by cancer. You guys have done some real impactful stuff. At the end of the day, is that sometimes a differentiator where somebody might say, might have been able to get a few grand more or a little bit more here and there, but like we're coming to Temple because we like your mission and we can really see some teachable, impactful stuff here.
Yeah, so I think it each individual is a separate instance,
Sure.
right? I
Yeah.
think some are interested in what's in front and behind the commas.
Hmm.
But then I also do think that there are families and student athletes that are interested in the how they're getting paid and what they're being a part of, because of what our mission is. I know for a fact that there's one student athlete that transferred in on our men's basketball program that had opportunities at other universities for a significant amount more money. But they wanted to be a part of the Philadelphia community, and they were significantly intrigued by having the ability to impact the Philadelphia and North Philadelphia communities as opposed to being at in a far off destination. And I sat down with the student athlete and the parents and said to them, listen, this is what we have to offer you. And I know that there's other organization or there's other universities and or collectives that are representing those universities that are offering more money. But what I can't promise you in dollars, I can promise you in this. Here's the examples of what we've done in the past. Here's the contact information of any and all student athletes that we've ever entered into agreements with. Call them. Ask them how we follow up on our promises. I feel exceptionally confident that any promise that I've ever made via contract or by handshake and word, we've followed through on. And so if you want to contact any previous student athletes, feel free to, and they'll share the same thing. And I think they can really understand the actual conviction that I have for being able to be a vehicle for change in the community. And because I mean, I don't need to, right? Like I could be off doing anything else, but I am at a summer basketball camp on a Sunday in North Philadelphia, like blowing up basketballs and bagging lunches and stuff because I do care and I think it's important and I think that there is value in that and I think it does it is a differentiator. I know that prospective student athletes, parents that have reached out to me about NIL opportunities at Temple have really embraced what we've done in the past and what we're projecting to do in the future. Not monetarily, but our activations, our relationships, and the things that I think that we can provide that many other collectives don't because we're not a transactional organization. It's not a thank you for throwing a pass or dribbling a basketball or spiking a volleyball, and here's your check. There's significant substance to it. And from that substance, they get compensated.
You talked about the recent visit to Fox Chase to honor cancer survivors. Tell me how that comes together. And I know that was last week. You know, we've had a chance to just talk offline about what it was like. Again, whose family unfortunately hasn't been affected by it. It's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to spend time with people who have survived and just gone through it. How did that come together, and how do you think it affected the student athletes who were there? You know, Linger the third was there. You had football players there, basketball players there, some coaches. Sounded like it was a great thing. There's impact there on both sides of it. What was that like, and how did that all come together?
Last year, I'm a racquetball player, and so I was playing a league match at an LA Fitness out by me in Fort Washington, and some of the articles the, that I had been interviewed for regarding NIL at Temple had made their way back to some of the folks that were in my league, and they had mentioned that they knew someone at Temple Hospital who worked in development that I should pick their brain, see how I could tackle fundraising a little bit differently because we kind of run into a brick wall. And through that conversation, I it kind of came to the realization like we have this wonderful hospital in our backyard, and our student athletes could make a significant impact. And I set up a couple phone calls and Zooms with the Fox Chase Cancer Center, and what came of that was we did an activation where we provided gift cards to a couple mothers that were going through cervical cancer treatment, and
Yeah.
provided Christmas gifts to them, holiday gifts to them. And so I kind of have continued the conversation. And so they said, we're doing a cancer survivors celebration at the hospital. And I said, I'd love to have some of our student athletes come and just show support and be a part of the celebration and volunteer where they can. And we had a bunch of our student athletes step up. Like you mentioned, Lynn Greer, a recent transfer from St. Joe's, and obviously Lynn's father is the chief of staff at Temple men's basketball. Elijah Gray, who's a recent transfer from Fordham. Shane Dezzoni, who's I believe, a redshirt senior, and Zion Stanford, who's going to be a sophomore, as a West Philadelphia resident. And then we had Jordan Montgomery, Latrell Jean, who's a recent transfer from FAU, Ben Aswike, and Taekwon King also come and volunteer. And so for about 5 hours, they served food, they handed out raffle tickets, they welcomed them at registration, and just kind of sat and conversed with them. And I think it's honestly probably more impactful for the student athletes to be in that environment than it is for the cancer survivors, right? It's one thing to go against Villanova in basketball. It's another thing to go against cancer. And so the folks in the Cancer Center shared some life experiences with them. But it was also fun to see the support. Lynn Greer the third's father was there supporting the team. Coach Michael Huger came and supported, and it was just a worthwhile venture. I had the opportunity to go down and just interact and see, and I'm looking forward to doing more and more of that, both at Temple Hospital and we've had meetings with other hospitals in the area on how we can support, and then also look to do more organic events ourselves as opposed to just partnering with other organizations. But I think it's worthwhile. It's valuable. It's the least that we could do as alumni, as students, student athletes, as departments can do for those folks that are battling cancer or going through some sort of health crisis. And if we can be a part of that and brighten their day, or even for a moment, I think it's worthwhile.
One more question for you here, and then if you want to hop in and answer these mailbag questions, a lot of these are for you, and some are, I think, general ones, and might as well throw you in on that if you've got some time too.
Sounds good.
What goals do you guys have? And we've got a mailbag question in here about like some camps and upcoming stuff, and we can kind of attack that one too. But do you have some tangible goals for what you want to do in the next 12 months? I mean, I know that you do, you're always forward thinking and forward focused on this stuff, but do you have like some tangible goals that you could talk about?
Yeah, financially, we want to hit our matching gift campaign. I think we're close to 100,000 of the 200,000 matched, and that'll be an ongoing process. Obviously, there's more buzz coming off the season, and as we have football coming up, we'll build off of that a little bit. And then as basketball season goes or comes into view, we'll make a larger push. But my main objectives right now are the charitable initiatives and making a legitimate impact and providing significant value towards our mission. And so we'll have, I would think, a bunch of announcements coming up in the next few weeks regarding different initiatives that I hope Temple alumni embrace, they participate in, they support, whether it's registration or passing it along and promoting it. But I think we're going to do some really cool stuff and things that all alumni and fans will be proud of.
Good stuff. We got some mailbag questions to get to here. A couple of these are subscribers from the OwlScoop.com message board. First one, well, the three-parter here, but we answered one of these questions already. TU Owls Fan 2004 is the screen name. Andy, what brought you to Temple originally, and what's your favorite Temple basketball and football memory?
What brought me to Temple originally? So I banged up my knee pretty good in high school, playing football and wrestling. Had two knee operations that weren't really rectified going to the Reading Hospital. And so I was looking for regionally some better doctors, and I was suggested to go to see someone named Dr. John Kelly, who is now actually, I think, the head of Penn Sports Orthopedic. And I came down to Temple my very first time, actually, at Temple Hospital for a doctor's visit and then ultimately 2 surgeries. And it was my first kind of chance to check out Temple. And I grew up in a very small town outside of Reading. And I liked the busyness of it. I liked the urban feel, the kind of gritty feel. I always lived in southeastern Pennsylvania, so I always kind of viewed Philly as somewhere that probably I'd like to end up as my future destination. And so I applied to a couple other schools, but I knew I wanted to go to Temple. I knew I wanted to get into the sports field, knew that I needed to be in a kind of a bigger city probably. And so I liked STHM when I came and visited, and from that I showed up on North Broad Street in 2003 and kind of haven't left since.
Second question here from Temple House fan 2004. We touched on this a little bit. Do you anticipate NIL being brought in-house at Temple in some form? We know it really, Arthur talked a little bit to one of my reporters, to Jake Gable at the event a couple weeks ago. But that the clarity of this question, it's not really in-house per se. There are some athletic departments that have dedicated positions that help connect with NIL. Do you anticipate NIL being brought in-house at Temple in some form? What were your thoughts beyond that? And if you had to explain that to people, when this listener, when this OwlScoop subscriber is saying being brought in-house, what that means, and do you see that happening at Temple?
Right. I think post-House decision, a lot of universities are going to be disseminating funding to their student athletes directly. I don't envision that happening at Temple. I don't think there's any. I don't think the resources or ability are there. From what I've gathered, I don't, and I'll obviously let folks from the athletic department confirm that or not. But I think that I don't envision anything going internally. I haven't had any discussions regarding the TUFF Fund or anything else moving in internally. It'll be interesting to see what other universities do, because if they do move things internally, then they're under the auspices of Title IX. So what I've already started to see is maybe some other universities moving fundraising under the umbrella of the university, but then outsourcing the dissemination of funds to a third party, so that the third party then makes the decisions on who receives the funding. So then you don't have to, right or wrong, give the same amount to the starting quarterback as you do for maybe some less recognized position. And so, but speaking specifically on Temple, I don't envision that happening anytime in the short term. But like I said, if you don't like NIL, wait 5 minutes, it may change.
Another question here. The screen name is what TU question there. Will there be any camps from players this summer similar to Hysier Miller's camp last year?
Yeah, there will be. And we'll have more information on that. I'm looking to get that solidified over the next week or two. But we should see at least 3 sort of events, clinics like that we hope that all of our alumni embrace, look to sponsor. I don't think it was any coincidence. If you look at the value of what we did last year, not only for the 100 or so kids that showed up to the camp, but it was fun going to games and seeing kids that were wearing Hysier's camp shirt at games, right? So there's a value there. And then there's also a value, I'm pretty sure every ESPN broadcast talked about Hysier's camp.
Yeah.
Along with his book. And so I think there was significant media value to that. And then also I just think there's, it goes back to our mission. We want to embrace and educate and the community in and around Philadelphia and leave it better than what we found it. And so we're going to continue to do so.
This is more sports centric, but again, you talk to coaches, you're on campus here and there. Detroit Owl on Twitter Couple of questions here. I don't know if this is kind of a mix of a question for you or the staff, but two-part question. Have you had the opportunity to watch any of the new basketball players practice? Who looks to be the fastest or strongest? I mean, I've had a chance to kind of chat with these guys and get some bits and pieces here and there. You were there shortly on campus yesterday.
Yeah.
I know you don't want to maybe speak on behalf of the staff, but I don't know. What have you seen? What have you heard? I know Zion Stanford looks to have impressed some people. All these guys, they take this opportunity now to work on their bodies, get healthy. The freshmen are coming in, and Aiden Tobias and Dylan Batee. What have you seen? How would you answer this one?
Well, they did run sprints yesterday, and they ran them
Uh,
because I missed a couple free throws. And so,
really?
yeah, Steve Settle won the sprints. I guess when you're, that tall and you're running sprints, those legs only need about 3 or 4 strides to go from, baseline to half court. So good for him for running sprints. In terms of strength, they all look like they're in great shape. Alan Son, who is the director of strength and conditioning, does a great job with them. But I'm excited, just like everyone else, to kind of get a better look. We're hoping to do a TUFF Fund event at either a workout or an exhibition or inter-squad scrimmage at some point this summer for all TUFF Fund donors, and then they can come to their own conclusions regarding who's looking lean and mean and ready for the summer. I know that I probably could use a couple sprints myself. Bikini season is not treating me well, so so I can assure you that I was not the strongest or the fastest at practice.
There's a lot to unpack there, Andy. Um,
A lot to unpack.
yeah. The second part of Detroit Owl's question is I really like Adam Fisher's staff. Do you think he'll be able to keep this staff intact for several years? I mean, we know college basketball is a year-to-year deal, just like anything else in life. But what are your thoughts on this one?
I hope not. I hope that we have assistant coaches that are ready to be head coaches at other places. If that happens, then you're doing something right, right? Like your assistant coaches are good at X's and O's and good at working the transfer portal and good at recruiting high school kids and good at developing players, right? And so I've become close with all the guys on the staff. So actually, yeah, I'd love for them to all stay and have great success and build this thing into an empire. I'm also a realist that, I know that those guys are career oriented and are working, but it always helps to have a pipeline of future head coaches. And so I'd love for them to stick around, but at the same time, I'd love for them to go get head coaching jobs and go find their career dreams.
Andy, are you a Game of Thrones guy? This next question is Game of Thrones related.
I know that winter is coming.
The question from Off the Hook 3 is if Temple was in Westeros, I think I'm pronouncing that right. I saw Game of Thrones, but it's been a couple years since I've watched it. Would it be Team Green or Team Black?
I have not a clue. Um, I've watched Game of Thrones once, and it was like in the week or two leading up to the series finale, and then so I haven't watched any of the stuff that has come out, the House of Dragons. If this was like Sopranos or The Wire or Breaking Bad or anything from like, I don't know, 1994 to 2010, that's my wheelhouse. But yeah, the Lord of the Rings, the that type of stuff has just kind of like missed me. Harry Potter, all of that.
You and my wife Chelsea know how bad I am in sticking with series, and I still you're going to be disappointed when I tell you this. I still have not seen The Wire. Chelsea is binge watching Ozark.
Yeah, that's good.
Have not
The longer you
seen.
wait for The Wire, the worse it's going to be because like they're using burner cell phones and that type of stuff. Like, and you'll be watching them use like flip phones, and you'll be like, God, this is so terrible. It's like, well, yeah, it's because it came out 20 years ago. So you have to. Like, The Wire's the best series of all time.
You're not the first person to say that.
Yeah, it's just The Wire is masters of the food bracket.
Andy, that's a great segue because at the outset of the pod, I said that Declan Landis was not going to be able to join us, but he has found some time to join us here on Zoom, and he's going to talk to us about the Scoop Summertime Madness food bracket. Because when we Andy, you know Kyle, he gets very particular about the name of this because he wants to link it to the Lana Del Rey song. But the latest round of voting has taken place. Declan, this has been your brainchild. You take great pride in this. Declan, appreciate you hopping on. How do
Hey,
you
thanks for having me. Andy, good to see you. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself, Declan?
Oh, just wonderful. Another day working. I got a job at a hardware store, which
The Ace is the place for the hardware store.
well, actually we're the helpful hardware store. We're
Oh,
not
the
the
helpful
helpful hardware
hardware.
folks anymore. So, it's a little bit of rebranding, but you know what? I love the job. So
Dec-
just a little out of my comfort zone.
Declan, both in Villas and in back home in Havertown, I have an Ace Rewards customer. I've spent I'm like I have ADD when I go there. I go there, I'm like, I'll go pick up something, and then the next day I'm back for something else and something else. This does not mean that I'm handy. Andy knows that I'm not like contractor or a super handy person, but spent a lot of money at Ace locations. So fully support what you're doing.
Hey, I appreciate that. If you ever want to come by, Price's Corner in Delaware, we're doing our thing. So it's really lovely. But
There you
you
go.
know,
You
you
always
know,
said
it's
no free shout outs, but there we go.
well, I mean, they do pay me, so I feel like,
Yeah.
technically it's not free, but
Yeah.
what are you gonna do? But
Declan,
I'm not gonna
how
lie, I'm doing the math right now for each matchup in my head. So
I
I
only
can't.
care about one.
Yeah,
Which
Andy,
one?
like
You want to start?
let's ease into this because Andy very poetically on the OwlScoop message board said that Masters was like would you say it was like a brief star that was only with us for a little while, and
It was the perfect confluence of excellent space,
yeah, it was
excellent
good.
food, fairly priced drinks,
Yeah.
and excellent time in Temple football history.
Mm-hmm.
And when you brought all those together, it was magic.
Mm-hmm.
Taken down by the Bagel Hut, I will be beside myself.
So you're
Andy, I
tabulating
hate
the
to break it
results
to you.
from Instagram and from Twitter, correct?
I am. I'm doing the math in my head right now, and unfortunately,
This is
Bagel Hut
ridiculous.
on Instagram. Let's start on Instagram, okay? Because it was a tight battle on both fronts. But on Instagram, we had 16 total votes, and 9 of those went toward the 4 seed Bagel Hut. And Twitter, well, I'll just tell you what, Twitter was not much better because of the 31 total votes, Bagel Hut earned 17 and a victory. They will move on.
Mm.
So just unfortunate, maybe next time we got to hit the campaign trail a little harder,
Yeah.
I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to say that, maybe.
Andy, add that to your list of things to do.
I I'll leave on that note. I have to go pick up my kids from school. I'm
Sorry, Andy.
disappointed. I'm
Sorry, Andy.
angry. I'm not, I'll be honest, I think Kyle's behind this. I I I think he just didn't want Masters to win. And
He has his passion projects. You remember how petty he was when we did the all-time draft thing and he just had this smear campaign?
yeah.
Yeah. So he could be
Um
behind it.
these are under protest.
All right.
There's nothing more solid than a Twitter poll and an Instagram poll. I'm a firm believer in that. Hey, we've
Well,
gotten a lot of complaints, so you would not be the first. Don't worry.
All
Andy,
right.
we
Well,
appreciate you being on with us. Have a safe trip to pick up the kids. Give Cooper and Nolan and Sophie a hug for us.
will do.
Thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
Go
See
Owls.
you, Andy.
All right. Big thank you to Andy Carl for joining us this week on the Scoop and bringing just some more context to what the TUFF Fund is doing and how they're collaborating with the Owl Elite Fund. Declan, to close things out, I did tell people that we'll do on or around the state next week if we can get you back on. I did not do that this week out of respect to you. But yeah, the OwlScoop Summertime Madness food bracket. So we know that Masters is not moving on. I'm a little disappointed in that as well because I was a big Masters fan. But who else is moving on here?
Great question. I know we started a little out of order, so I will continue to go out of order. And like I mentioned, I'm on my lunch break at work, so I am rapidly scrolling through all the screenshots that I took ahead of time. But if you'll recall, in the Macon region, the other matchup, the 2-3, was I would say, your pride and joy in this
Yeah.
tournament. General Express, Boston Donut, taking on Mexican Grill Stand. And last I checked, it was a close battle. Okay, here we are on Instagram. Shocking, actually, in the 2-3, 8 votes for Mexican Grill Stand, only 4 for General Express Boston Donut. But on Twitter, it appears that Mexican Grill Stand will move on. Wow. Down goes the controversial pick in the 2 seed. So if you do the math, the Macon region final appears to be a battle of the stalwarts, really, in the 4 seed Bagel Hut and the 3 seed Mexican Grill Stand. John, I know you've got to be heartbroken.
You're just so happy with this because you were upset that place was like a passion project for me. You don't
No,
get
no, no,
time.
no, no, no. I'm upset because, at first it sounded like it was one vendor, but then when you explained it, it sounded like 2 vendors, and I questioned the legitimacy of that. I think the right team won. Okay, I think the right team won here. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm not gonna get controversial. I don't have an opinion on these matchups here, other than I just want a good game. I never want to see your dreams dashed.
All right,
But
what
if
else?
it's for the good of the tournament, that's what we got to do.
What else do we have here?
We'll go back to the Cleco region in the number 1 and 4 matchup, Orient Express versus Burger Tank. We had Orient Express winning the Instagram vote 10-6 over Burger Tank, which I know is a fan favorite, and they took the Twitter vote as well. They will be moving on, unfortunately, for you Burger Tank fans out there. I know I heard Johnny talk about Graham Foley last week because, unlike Kyle, I do listen to the episodes I'm not on because that's my love for this show. Orient Express is moving on to the Cleco region final in the Elite 8. They will face either Footlong Truck or Richie's, as we're looking at it right now. Richie's won 81% of the Twitter vote, which is a hefty win. And they took 81% in the Instagram as well. A good win for Richie's, unfortunate end for the Footlong Truck. So it'll be Orient Express versus Richie's for the right to move on out of that Cleco
How
region.
about that? That's awkward for them. They are right next to each other on the wall.
That's tough. That really is tough. I mean, it's unfortunate.
You think they just politely nod to each other, but they know what's at stake this week.
I think they're 2 warriors. They're 2 stalwarts. They're always going to be rivals and competitors. I think I'd like to believe there's a healthy respect along that wall because there are a lot of juggernauts on the wall. I mean, you're already talking about Eddie's, which is another number 1 seed. We'll see if they moved on in the tournament, but I'd like to imagine there's a lot of healthy respect on that wall.
Did you see that our friend Breland Moore from Fox 29 chimed in and she was upset that Temple Teppanyaki was not in the field? And I was trying to get more people to vote, tagged her, tagged Kevin Nagandi, Colin Thompson, a lot of other people chimed in. Breland upset that Temple Teppanyaki did not make the field. Maybe they're in it next year, but
maybe they're in it next year. But John, to be honest with you, I saw the tweet and I love Breland. She's awesome. I've got to meet her a couple times now. With all due respect, I mean, Temple Teppanyaki is probably the 37th team out of the 36 we had. I simply do not like the Teppanyaki truck. And you know what? We opened the field up. We said, hey, if you have anybody you want in this tournament, speak now, forever hold your peace.
I could have,
but
I like that truck.
I don't think it would have helped. I think it would have been a first round exit, to be quite honest with you.
Ooh, all right.
It's good. It's good. It's just not better than the majority of places on here, unfortunately, in my sight.
That's your opinion.
I agree. It is my opinion. But you asked me for my opinion. So here we are.
I did. What else we got? Who else moving on?
We'll move on to the Cheney region. The 1 seed Maxies taking on the number 5 seed Owl's Nest. And I know this is a little bit of a generational battle here.
Old pizza versus new pizza.
Yeah, unfortunately for old pizza, new pizza took 87% of the Instagram vote. And on Twitter, they took 86% of the vote. Yeah, Maxies, I mean, it's a staple. You think Temple, you think Maxies. That's just how the brain works.
Yeah.
And then in the other half of that bracket, the number 2 seed Pub Web up against the lone underdog, the lone big upset in the bracket, number 6, J&H. Will their run continue? Unfortunately, not in the Twitter vote, 62% for Pub Web. Sorry, I had to get the drama up there. and PubWeb won 62% on the Instagram. So unfortunately, J&H will be gone, and it's the battle of the two bars here, John, between PubWeb and Maxie's out of that Cheney region.
Yeah, now we're really getting down to it. PubWeb versus Maxie's and Richie's versus Orient Express. I mean, now you're really starting to see the field separate itself.
They're battles.
Yeah, these are getting
We've
tough.
got some battles. It's going to be, you know what? But we knew that there was a lot of good food on this campus, and eventually at some point the Titans were going to show themselves, and I think we're getting there. We're about to get there even further in the Dupree region, because the number 2 seed Thai's Vietnamese food taking on the number 3 seed Richie's Cafe. Richie with, as you pointed out, 2 horses in this race. So fortunately for him, he won 62% of the Instagram vote.
Yeah.
And then on the other end, they won 71% of the Twitter vote, and that's going to do it for him. Moving on to the Elite 8, where they will face either the Crepe Truck or Eddie's. And a little bit of a shocker out of the Crepe Truck in Twitter. They won 68% of the vote there and tied on Instagram, which means Crepe Truck takes down Eddie's.
This is tough.
And moves on.
Tough.
Wow, that's unfortunate.
Real tough for you. Eddie's, this is going to be disappointing for you. It's going to be disappointing for Johnny. It's going to be disappointing for Brimir. I like Eddie's. Great pizza. Probably the best pizza on campus, in my opinion. Doesn't mean I don't like Maxie's pizza, but Eddie's is good. But you surprised by this or no?
I'm surprised by Eddie's. I think, I'm surprised and I'm not, right? Like I think if you went around campus today and asked people, I think Eddie's wins. But I think it's a lot of people caught up in the nostalgia of the Crepe Truck, which is fine. Like that's how
part of it. It's part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's part of the tournament. I'd expect nothing less. But I don't think it reflects what it would say today. But I do think that that's how this tournament operates, and I think that's totally fine. I am satisfied saying that the Crepe Truck moves on. I'm not upset about it. So out of the Clecco region, next week, we've got the number 1 seed Orient Express taking on the number 2 seed Richie's for a spot in that Final Four. Out of the Macon region, we've got the number 3 seed Mexican Grill Stand taking on the number 4 seed Bagel Hut. Out of the Cheney region, we've got the number 1 seed Maxie's taking on the number 2 seed PubWeb. And out of the Dupree region, we've got the number 3 seed Richie's Cafe taking on the number 4 seed Crepe Truck. So it's going to be one heck of a week for voting.
Now that you've kind of started to pick up on the voting patterns between Twitter, between Instagram, how do you think next week shapes up?
In all honesty, and it's going to be interesting, but I think if Maxie's beats PubWeb, they win the whole thing. I think there are a lot of Maxie's fans out there, which is fair. I think, they reach a very broad audience with their menu and other selections. But it just seems that week in and week out, we're talking about Maxie's blowout after Maxie's blowout. I think if PubWeb is probably their toughest challenger, just in terms of, you're sort of looking at the same thing. But I think if Maxie's wins that matchup, I think they win the whole thing. I'm not going to say the same for PubWeb, but I think right now Maxie's is the favorite left in the field.
Just a reminder, where can people vote? When does the voting start for the next round?
So I think we're getting a lot of traction on these Tuesday morning tweets. So next Tuesday, I'll put it on the message boards. It'll be on my account at Declan Landis on Twitter. We'll have it on the OwlScoop at OwlScoop_com Instagram account, Threads as well. If you're into that, I don't want to exclude anybody, but it's on the message board as well. Go vote. It'll be live Tuesday morning, and then you'll be able to vote on there. Voting will wrap up the next day, that Wednesday at 12 p.m. so I can get the results into these guys. But go get your favorite place through to the finals. We're looking at Elite 8 matchups right now. Only 8 teams remain. You don't want your team to not be part of that. Go make your voice heard.
There you go. Well, Declan, thanks for hopping on to join us. Andy Carl, big thank you to him once again for joining us on the Scoop this week. We'll have more for you next week, more football recruiting updates, more basketball recruiting updates to pay attention to. So thank you all, as always, for joining us on the Scoop, and we will talk to you next week.